Hello and welcome to this Come to Jesus Daily devotional. I trust you are well. Today we continue in our Luke series exploring who Jesus is, and we've been considering what the Sabbath means for Christians. Today we ask the question, should we have a day that's set aside for rest and worship? Let's read from Luke 6:1-2. One Sabbath, Jesus was going through the grain fields, and his disciples began to pick some heads of grain, rub them in their hands, and eat the kernels. Some of the Pharisees asked, "Why are you doing what's unlawful on the Sabbath?" Today's lesson. God has designed us to have a 1-in-6 rhythm to our week, if at all possible. God has designed us to have a 1-in-6 rhythm to our week, if at all possible. It seems to me that in our increasingly busy lives, the idea of having a personal Sabbath has become a more popular topic. However, it's often presented as an approach to self-care rather than a day that has anything to do with worship and meeting with the saints, meeting with friends. In his recent and highly popular book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, John Mark Comer writes, God, built a rhythm into the DNA of creation, a tempo, a syncopated beat. God worked for 6, rested for 1. When we fight this work 6 days, Sabbath 1-day rhythm, we go against the grain of the universe. And to quote philosopher H. Farmer, if you go against the grain of the universe, you'll get splinters. It's been proven by study after study that there is zero correlation between hurry and productivity. In fact, once you work a certain number of hours in a week, your productivity plummets. Want to know what the number is? 50 hours. Ironic, that's about a 6-day work week. That's John Mark Comer. So does the Sabbath 1-in-6 principle teach us to have a day of rest? Is it God's will that we have a day in the week set aside for rest and worship? Many believe that God's institution of the 1-in-6 Sabbath principle is good for all people regardless of their faith. At the creation of the world, we read of the introduction of the 1-in-6 principle in Genesis 1:2-3. By the 7th day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the 7th day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the 7th day, made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. As I've said previously in devotionals this week, I believe the Sabbath for Christians is our rest in Christ. However, I do believe that we are to, if we can, have a day that's set aside from our usual work with a focus on worship. I put this in the category of wisdom rather than a command from God. We don't see any teaching in the New Testament about having a day of rest. No epistle urges for our well-being to take a day off. However, I believe that it's God's will that we seek to have such a day and seek to establish such a day with the influence that we have, because we are always in danger of enslaving and being enslaved to work. So in response, God has designed us, I believe, to have a 1-in-6 rhythm to our week, if at all possible. So are we doing our best to have a day that's free from our usual work and is focused around rest and worship? Could we give our minds to God's truth and fast from our usual diet of news and entertainment? Could we get organised so that any preparation for work doesn't encroach on this day? To finish, here's what I consider to be the ideal and second best approach to a day of rest. So the ideal, develop a culture that has a shared day of rest on the Lord's Day, Sunday, which will give us the opportunity to worship and build relationships together. I'm sure we can see that's an ideal, a shared day, ideally the Lord's Day, that we can worship and rest. But second best, have a day of rest that's not necessarily shared with others, but still affords time for recreation, but this will limit community building and community worship. God bless you.